Hey, welcome everyone. We're going to give folks just 2 more minutes to sign on and then we'll get started. Everybody, we're just going to give folks 1 more minute to jump on so that we can get started. Looks like some of our crowd we're at about 30 people right now, expecting a few more. All right, all. Hello, everyone. Welcome all to the second public meeting for Mecklenburg County's newest park. We had great attendance and participation in not just our first information session a few months ago, but also in today's lunchtime meeting. And so we're looking forward to sharing the master plan process with you all today and workshopping with you on the vision for what this park will become. So before we get started, I'm going to pass it over to Bert Lynn for a little bit about this project and team introduction. So Bert, you can take it away.
Hey, good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us, whether you were able to join us at our first round of virtual meetings in June, or were lucky enough to meet us at some of our pop-up meetings in July, or if this is your first meeting and you found out about us through some friends or through our public input website, thank you for joining us tonight. We're really excited about this project and ready to get it underway, and we've got some exciting stuff to share with you tonight. So my name is Bert Lynn. I'm the Capital Planning Division Director for Park and Recreation in Mecklenburg County. Joining me from the county tonight are Brian Bennett, the project manager for this project, as well as Senior Planner Katie Lloyd and Planner Darnika Waters. Our lead consultant for the project is Design Workshop. Emily, Adeline, and Yuri are here with Design Workshop. Jackie from J. Turner Consulting will share some insight on what we learned so far from an engagement standpoint. Ted Duncan with Stewart, who's providing our civil engineering and our landscape architecture support on the project, is here, as well as Dean and Paul with C Design, who are our architects for the project. So what we're going to do tonight is give you an update on what we learned and share some exciting couple of concepts based on the input that we've received so far. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Adeline and let her get started with the presentation.
Thanks, Bert. Hello, all. My name is Adeline Lerner with Design Workshops Raleigh Studio. Real quick, before we get started, I just wanted to mention a few housekeeping items. So we will have a Q&A session at the end of this webinar, and participants are encouraged to submit any questions that you all have through the Q&A box at the end of the session. And you can find that button on for the Q&A box on your Zoom settings toolbar. You can also raise your hand or chat to the panelists for any technical troubleshooting, and someone from our team will assist you during the meeting. The meeting is also being recorded, and it will also be posted on the project website so that you can forward or pass it along to your friends and your neighbors, and also review it again after the presentation is over. We're very excited to speak with you all again about the process for creating what will be a very new type of regional park to add to the Mecklenburg County Park family. We're currently in the process of visioning the design for the park, and today's meeting really lays the foundation for the master plan phase, which begins later this month. As we move forward into the final phase of this project, it's important to note that a master plan is what is used to document the shared vision we are creating for the park today, such that it is a successful and thoughtfully designed public space for many years to come. The vision will be refined and turned into a phasing strategy that is executable within a realistic time frame, process, and budget that Mecklenburg County can successfully operate and maintain, which is very important, and create a well-loved and well-used public park. So the master plan process will guide all the phases of design development through the phased construction of site infrastructure and amenities. Since the discussion of site analysis and context in the first public engagement session, we've held several stakeholder meetings to work with the county and the towns on the possibilities for this park. And as a large, fully canopy area in the county, maintaining the forest feel while also supporting the continued growth of the surrounding area and taking into account the existing infrastructure planning, such as the Eastfield Road Small Area Plan and Huntersville Bikeway plans, will help serve this park and the region in the long term. We also hosted outreach events, and we have applied various engagement methods over the last 3 months. So we've heard overwhelming support and excitement. We thank you all for that, for this project, and you all have helped affirm the programming and the overall vision for what is on track to be a very well-loved adventure park. So today, we will present to you 2 draft design concepts and 2 different approaches to what an adventure park could mean on this site. So after this meeting, we will look to you again for your feedback over the next month in order to finalize a master plan that creates that shared vision and lays the foundation for a new and unique park for the county. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jackie Turner to brief you on the engagement process for this project so far and how it is helping shape the design of the park.
Thank you, Adeline, and good evening, everyone. Yes, as Adeline and Bert also mentioned, it's been 2 months since we had a large group come together like this, and so we want to share what we've heard during that period of time. Some of it was through the survey that many of you took. 399 people took it, and it was distributed. The responses were distributed throughout the county, as you can see on the map on the left. So it wasn't just clustered around the site itself. And we had a lot of things. The questions are referred to in the titles of the bubbles that you see on the right. But one of the things we asked about access to the park, and people's preference was for sidewalk and pedestrian path getting into the park from neighborhoods, potentially through roads. But and then there was a tie for bicycle and car use. And the way that the park would be used a lot of people just wanted to be able to enjoy the outdoors, and they didn't necessarily have a specific activity. But then to follow that up, it was bicycling, hiking, walking, which we heard many times, and you'll see reflected in preferences for activities, having nature trails, bike facilities, mountain biking came up a lot. Canopy walk, which you'll find out more about later if you haven't seen that sort of thing, nature and adventure play. And then for specific landscape elements, again, that the concept of nature, being able to preserve that canopy in that wooded area, and having water is always a nice feature if possible. Interactive elements, views, which you actually can get from some locations in the park because the terrain is quite varied. Preferred use for hiking. And then we did hear, who's going to be using the park. And so a lot of people mentioned an overwhelming amount, families with school-age children, also seniors, and lots of dog owners were looking for that. And in terms of like basic amenities that we heard, restrooms, trash bins, tables. So nothing particularly unique about that, just the basics, but it's an important thing, especially if you've been in a space that doesn't have it. Next slide, please. And so in addition to the almost 400 people that responded to the survey, we had the pop-up events that Adeline alluded to. And those were, and we had 90 touch points, which basically means they didn't necessarily take the online survey. We provided them with information to take with them, to take the survey, and a sort of short survey that was a version of the online. So with that, with the sort of limited response that we had in hand on that, again, you see restroom, shade, tables. Those are some of the amenities that are important. And again, nature, interaction with water vistas. So that stayed the same. But with these outreach, we were able to reach families and seniors and to meet people while they were out doing something else. So that was pretty exciting. And next slide, please. We also wanted to talk with we wanted to have diverse input. So we specifically targeted, listed a lot of groups, targeted them, we sent them an invitation, and we ended up with the groups in the blue box that responded, and they were scheduled for focus group interviews. So we had 3 focus group interviews that had people attend, where we had sort of a few prompting questions, but basically just let the discussion flow. And we found out a lot during those virtual meetings. And some of the input, though the groups varied from outdoor recreation focus, history, social and culture focus, natural resources, there was a lot of similar input across the board. There were folks looking for environmental education and learning opportunities. There, in a lot of cases, the conservation or preservation of the tree canopy. The historian from the library historian that was in one of the groups had a quote talking about the canopy in this area, that this this property has gone from forest to farms to suburbs to forest. The succession is that it is back to being a forest, but it has been a lot of things since it got to that point. Some of the other groups were really excited about the accessibility of the site. They wanted to be able to bring groups there, whether it was youth groups, mentorship groups. We heard from the 100 Black Men of Charlotte saying that it would be a great space to have some of their programs or school groups or camps, and that everyone wanted the site to feel safe and feel welcoming to all people and have it be multi-generational. And that can happen through multiple methods in terms of the signage and the way that the site is promoted. So we got a lot of great ideas, which we'll share later. And we probably will have more details on the website that you can check out at your leisure. So I'll give it back to Adeline now.
Thanks, Jackie. So as Jackie mentioned, over the last couple of months, we've also sought feedback on the potential amenity menu that was presented during the first public input session or public information session. So the top choices from on that feedback menu are the nature trails and interpretive trails, the canopy walk, bike facilities, and nature play, and an adventure and low ropes course. And then choices ruled out for site impact and appropriateness, as well as maintenance, or formal playgrounds with special surfacing and equipment, and primitive camping or glamping. The demographic analysis and outreach efforts also over the past couple of months have revealed some of the user types that are most likely to use and access these types of amenities. And as you can see illustrated here in these cute little icons, while the adventure park may naturally cater to nature lovers and active people and adventurers and explorers, it's also important to note that the park will serve a large community of people with various ages, various abilities, and various family structures. So, and as Jackie mentioned earlier, school and community groups will also find opportunities in the park for mentorship and education, which is something that was suggested to us through the focus group discussions. And now that we've gone over a recap of the programming and an introduction of the potential site users, I'd like to orient you to the site in case you haven't seen some of the site maps before, and I'll call out a few major considerations that will be factored into the design of the park. So very briefly here, Situated on Eastfield Road in Huntersville, the site is home to upland forests with hardwoods, and just walking around the site in a counterclockwise manner, there are remnant pine stands from previous timbering operations and farming. You cross several remnants of agricultural terracing and drainage, as well as the largest ephemeral stream running through the center. This is mostly dry during the late spring and dry in the summer, and in the fall, and it's maximum, 7 feet in width. So it's not a huge waterway, and it's mostly just drainage from the site. The northeastern part of the site, moving up on the map, is the most biodiverse. It's got a really nice cliff walk that leads you up and over the cliff, along the creek, into the valley of large beech and hardwood trees, and then along a wide utility easement on the way back. And then finally, the last stop is remnants of an old agricultural homestead. Now, there's not much left at the homestead site. There's a little bit of foundation work, some former gardens, a chimney, and some dilapidated outbuildings, but it does provide a nice flat area. So in summary, the site is very large at 115 acres, and because of its canopy and variety in terrain, it's very easy to find yourself forgetting about all of the growth that's around it when you're in there. And in the first public information session, we also covered which of the areas on site were best suited for structures and amenities based on erosive soils and building factors such as quality of habitat and slopes. You can see there are many steep slopes on this site on this green map here. This analysis went overlay that helps us to determine where critical locations such as siting of a main community facility might be during the design of the park. And so that's represented in the green areas on the map on the far right. And of course, structures like community facilities and canopy walks and amenities such as adventure courses that require footing and soil stability. There's also a lot of careful planning for preservation of the biodiverse areas that will keep this park experience special. So when we look back on the suitable areas for building, it is clear that this site will provide ample opportunities for not just parking and facilities and play areas, but it'll also provide a lot of variety and interest through differing trail and amenity experiences across the site. And now that we're caught up on some of the nuances of the site's environment, we're on to the really fun stuff. So we'd like to present to you today 2 different visions for what an adventure park could represent and look like on this site. So these 2 visions vary in their types of adventure, their level of activation or intensity of amenities, and their impact to the site. The first concept approaches the adventure theme as more of a nature-based, explorative, and immersive experience. So it will be a low-impact scheme, and that basically means that it will have less vehicular access and parking. It will have fewer structures and more passive amenities. The second concept ramps up a little bit more. It defines the adventure experience as an action-packed, fitness-oriented, and it provides multiple opportunities for play throughout the site. It will be our medium impact scheme with more vehicular access, more parking, additional structures, and of course, more active amenities. And though there are common themes and amenities between each of these visions, you'll find that they also differ in their types of circulation, their levels of energy, and their destination offerings, but both still celebrate the full canopy of the site. So let's start with concept A. Our first concept is called Mech Wonder. And this concept is all about immersing oneself in nature, taking detours in the woods to explore, and celebrating the variety of habitat and natural and cultural history in and throughout the site's diverse tree canopy. Again, this scheme has less vehicular access and more centralized parking, has fewer buildings or structures and more passive amenities such as nature trails that imply a more minimal impact to the site during the creation of the park. So we've also heard your concerns about respecting the privacy of the surrounding and the future neighborhoods in the area. So One of the goals of site design for this project will be to preserve up to 100 feet of tree buffer around the edges of the site, as well as providing ample parking for the park's capacity. The central spine of nature-based amenities in this scheme ties together all of the site experiences and celebrates the most biodiverse areas on site, as you can see represented in these darker areas underneath these activation zones on this map on the right. So everywhere that you see that's a little bit darker underneath those zones on this map is where the more biodiverse areas are on site, very concentrated in the northeastern portion of the site. And here is a vision of what a nature-based adventure experience could look like on this site. So we'll zoom into each of these areas in just a bit, but I'd first like to walk you through some of the site access considerations for this concept, and you will notice that these are largely repeated on the second concept as well, with a few minor differences. So there are potential thoroughfares and access points to the park with respect to the Eastfield Road Small Area Plan and the potential greenway from the Huntersville Bikeway Plan along the northern and western edges of the site. Additionally, pedestrian and bicycle only entrances as planned by the development occurring around the site have been included, and the main pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular entrance is along Eastfield Road. In this concept, the main community hub or gathering area is tucked into the woods. It is at the location of the old homestead, and it provides a treehouse feel and the potential for exploration of the cultural and natural history of the site, as well as play in both the forest and a potential pollinator meadow environment located within the utility easement. The main event is that central spine I mentioned earlier, which will be an accessible canopy walk that circles the community hub and then guides visitors into the heart of the site so that everyone can explore the variety of ecology within the site, from those remnant agricultural pine stands to the large beech trees in the creek and the valley. And that canopy walk also provides spurs to all the surrounding site amenities, including many picnic areas and gathering areas, detours for adventure obstacle trails in the woods. So not losing that conventional adventure feel, and then many interpretive trails for wildlife viewing and birding, as well as multi-purpose trails. If this is to be a destination park that serves both the community and the region, accessibility is obviously critical. So that's why this concept includes the accessible canopy walk, as well as multi-purpose trails that connect the potential future greenway to the north and all of the main gathering and amenity areas. So these trails are universally designed to accommodate everyone from a neighbor on their daily walk to commuters to visitors with various abilities and even occasional maintenance crew. The passive nature and locations of those trails in this concept also achieve an easier difficulty rating according to the National Park System scale. So this image on the left gives you an idea of the conditions of this type of circulation and how this type of circulation will accommodate users with various abilities. And this map on the right is a brief look at how those trails and their connections are developing within this concept. The primary type of circulation and trails for the Neck Wander concept include those multi-purpose trails for walking, biking, and occasional service. So those are much wider trails, more compacted and accessible. And we also have about 3 miles of hiking trails, as well as an earthen pump track. And now let's zoom into some of those major site destinations, amenities, and circulation conditions, and we'll start with the hub. So a main facility with a community treehouse feel is centered on the site of the old agricultural homestead, and it really provides the entry point where folks of all ages can stay and play or start to wander, either via a multi-purpose trail or the boardwalk or hiking trail. And so the canopy walk provides a main route to all the amenities in the heart of the site, working with the terrain as first a gentle boardwalk that gradually elevates you into the tree canopy in the heart of the site. Here's a conceptual section of that hub area within the existing terrain with that open play area, main facility, the canopy walk entry and multi-purpose trails, and nature experiences, as well as it also guides visitors through the pollinator meadow and into the woods. Further into the canopy walk is where the real magic happens. So providing visitors with a view of the trees, there are occasional spots of interest at its overlook, as well as lounge areas and multi-level play areas for all ages. And now I'm going to pass it over to Dean to speak a little bit more to what these hubs and nodes could look like in this concept.
Thanks, Adeline. So we've broken down the architecture into really two different categories. The first would be the hubs that you're seeing in front of you, but these are larger event spaces. They're community gathering centers. So the purpose is multi-purpose, flexible, could be rented. There's also nodes on the other side. So hubs and nodes. Nodes are a little bit smaller gathering or activity spaces, also have the potential to be rented, but these would be more like picnic shelters, trailheads, nature blinds, that kind of thing. So what you're seeing in front of you, really, we have two distinct options, but the architecture for each really complements the overall use of the park. So where this options, the Mech Wander, is really all about nature exploration and immersion in nature. So we were really inspired by this idea of the community treehouse. So the image in the lower right-hand corner really starts to see this as this building immersed in nature. It also creates flexible spaces that blur the lines between indoor and outdoor space, really for this community gathering to happen. And then also really the other factor on this is just for nature lovers. So you have wonderful overlooks with that you can observe nature. And then you also have a lot of transparency and glass for views to the outdoors, like you're seeing in the image on the lower left. For the nodes in this option, it's very similar concepts. Just think about it from a smaller scale. The image on the lower left is showing really what these areas off of the canopy walk, or it could be off of some of these trails, could be. So think about places to meet, to rest, to eat, to observe nature. So you're seeing a picnic shelter up in the top right, a potential trailhead to observe nature there or just to gather, and then also a nature blind on the lower right hand side. So these are all just examples of nodes.
Thanks, Dean. And so on the other side of the hub in this concept is the main circuit for those multi-purpose trails, as well as the pump track. So it provides all skills of bike riders, young families, all the way to active seniors, and all skill levels, a way to experience the terrain and ecologies of the meadow and woods on two wheels. Radiating from the canopy walk and accessible nodes on site are a variety of nature-based adventure experiences. So that includes wildlife viewing trails with interpretive elements, as well as trails and adventure play detours along trails. So that means amenities such as nature play and exploratory obstacle courses that are a great opportunity for reuse of materials from the site that could be harvested during construction. And so that's it for concept A. And now we'll dive into the second concept, which invites visitors to gather in flexible porch-like areas throughout the site to get fit in the forest. So as I mentioned earlier, this scheme is more activated, a little more impact to the site. And then you can also trek, play, and choose your own adventure based on your skills and energy level when you visit. Again, the scheme has more vehicular access and decentralized parking for a forested entry sequence. more buildings or structures and more active amenities such as fitness and bike trails that imply more of an impact to the site during the creation of the park. So while it's important to preserve those high quality areas of habitat on site, you can see that the activation zones for this concept act as a circuit for those adventure amenities for various nature experiences, for fitness, and for learning. And here's a vision of what that play and fitness adventure experience could look like on the site. So to minimize further potential impact to the site, and the hub and parking and main infrastructure in this scheme are located closest to Eastfield Road for more of an accessible community porch feel. So this concept caters to both the neighbors and the region by providing that upfront gathering hub and nodes, including the main facility, and more local community-oriented amenities like a potential dog park, which we've heard a lot of feedback about over the past couple of months, potentially located within the easement. So because vehicles have a greater level of access to the site, this allows for a more formal adventure and low ropes course or adventure park play area, as well as opportunities for fitness, team building, and interaction with the site's vistas. So finally, this concept is for all you mountain and cross-country bikers out there. It does have more bike amenities than the previous concept, which we'll dive into in just a minute. So while the primary access and accessible circulation remain similar to the first concept, you can see that in the concept, again, the community has those opportunities for fitness loops and journeying through the woods right off the main hub and nodes, and those more sort of spread out parking areas that go to each of those nodes. So due to the increase in trail mileage and trail uses, as well as the variety of skill levels needed to navigate the various trails throughout the site, some of these trails will more greatly vary in their difficulty and challenge to the user than the first concept. The primary circulation types and trail types in MEC-TREC include those multi-purpose trails for walking and occasional service. There's about 2.3 miles of hiking trails, which is a little less than the other concept, and more narrow earth and fitness trails for trail running, which we also heard a lot of desire for from the public over the last 2 months. And so that provides also a more sort of challenging backcountry hiking experience for those looking for it. As I mentioned earlier, this concept has a bike amenity circuit. So that includes 1.2 miles of trail and a pump track with more exciting wood features. The hub in MEC-TREC, as I mentioned earlier, is closer to Eastfield Road to provide that community porch feel. It's the nexus for learning and choosing your own adventure with a nearby series of other community-centered amenities. And it also has a forest fitness loop, as well as what we're calling a teaching forest, which is a flexible term. It can mean a lot of things, but it's where anyone from a neighbor on their daily walk with their dog to active seniors or school and community groups can start to learn about the site, be introduced to the nature on site, and even test their skills before tackling some of the adventure amenities around the site. We also have a less intensive but still accessible boardwalk trail that circulates folks from the hub into the woods and main adventure park area, extending that idea of a porch where everyone can gather, say hello, see folks you know, explore and choose their own journey into the site. And now I will pass it over to Dean once more. Oh, no, I will not yet. We have a couple of sections that we can show you, again, of sort of how those areas work together in the hub. So the main community porch, the main facility, and that teaching forest within the terrain, guiding you to the porch promenade and over to the more proper adventure play park area and low ropes course area. And now I'll pass it over to Dean to talk about the hub.
Thanks, Adeline. So again, we want the architecture to really complement the ideas behind MEC-TREC of action, fitness, play. So really what we're pushing for are just engaging elements for all ages. So that means encouraging activity. You're seeing in the lower left hand side some elements built in for learning or for play for children. And then really playing off this idea of this front porch community area. So not only does it provide shade, but it also just naturally promotes people gathering and meeting and having fun. For the nodes, really, again, it's about encouraging activity. So in some ways that means that the architecture really takes a back seat and becomes a backdrop for these group exercise areas. You're seeing some yoga on the bottom left. You're seeing some just community gatherings on the upper right. But then also really it's also about that connection to the boardwalk and some of the other amenities on site. So how these structures can be viewing platforms right off of that boardwalk, or it could be a more functional toilet facility off the porch promenade that you're seeing in the middle right image. So a lot of opportunities there.
Exciting. Thank you, Dean. So moving over to the northeastern section of the site. So because this will be a park like no other in the region, we are looking at the possibility of providing a unique type of bicycle facility that creates a diversity of options for bikers in the area and in the county, as well as the neighboring county. So the terrain and features in this area are less diverse in this portion of the site. So they do provide exciting possibilities for, the terrain and features are, the terrain features more diversity in this site as far as the slopes go. However, this portion of the site is less diverse as far as habitat goes. I want to make that clear. So as you can see here, we're reserving this approximate location for this type of amenity so that it's still supported by the public moving forward. And if there's still a lot of excitement generated around it, we can develop partnerships within the mountain bike community in order to create high quality and easily maintained bike amenities, which we've heard a lot of feedback on over the past couple of months. There's also quite a few nature trails and spurs. We have what we're calling the Big Trek Trail, one of those primary wider trails circulating throughout the site and touching on all of the amenities throughout the site, a couple of fitness loops, and because we heard from folks that want that trail running or backcountry experience, a couple of spurs that are specifically dedicated to a little bit more of a rugged or fitness experience. And we also are not losing that interpretive trail amenity as well. So terracing trails and giving, a variety of skill levels, different journeys throughout the park. There are also a lot of opportunities for fitness and play. Dean mentioned earlier, providing flexible platforms throughout the site that continue that idea of the porch all throughout the site. Those can be used for, yoga classes, picnics, gatherings, or just places for rest. And then we also have the low ropes and adventure course area. It's much larger than the previous scheme, and instead of being tucked into the woods, it's more of a course and a circuit that young families to active adults and others can complete. And it's also because the road reaches further into the site on this lower right hand portion of your screen here, it is more accessible as well. And so here's a section of what that first area looks like. So the terraced trails and that primary hiking trail that runs throughout the site, some of those multi-purpose platforms and porches and areas for nature play. We heard a lot about folks that wanted to interact with water on the site. And while you may not be interested in, fishing in these mostly dry creek beds, throughout the year, there is a lot of opportunity, throughout the seasons for interaction with a little bit of water or for dry creek bed play. So in summary, again, these two concepts approach adventure in a different way. We have Mech Wonder as the lower impact, low to medium activation scheme that really focuses on nature exploration and immersion. And then we have Mech Trek, which is more action and fitness oriented with lots of opportunities for play with all ages, and is our medium impact scheme. So that means more vehicular access and parking structures, more active amenities. Here are those two side by side. So this just shows you the level of user types that each of these concepts cater to. Obviously, this is not all inclusive, comprehensive. A lot of these amenities are flexible for the different user groups. So we just wanted to show you, based on the layout of the amenities, which user types would be likely to use these areas, as well as the differences in the major nature-based spines versus the locations in the hubs. And finally, the adventure destinations. So here are the differences in the adventure destinations. Again, in Mech Wonder, we have that canopy walk that fits you into the heart of the site. We have the community treehouse for gathering that's tucked into the woods, and then plenty of interpretive trails and obstacle trails tucked into the woods. For Mech Trek, we have the community porch and several community-based amenities right up front on the site. We have a little bit more site accessibility via vehicles into the adventure park area with a low ropes course and adventure play, lots of flexible platforms and fitness loops all throughout the site to replicate the idea of the porch, and true mountain biking or cross-country biking trails, as well as a pump track. And now, before we get to our Q&A session and next steps, I would like, we have a few polling questions for you. So I'd like to get your feedback and really just your first reactions on what these concepts look like to you, what they mean to you as a community member. And all your feedback, whether it's good or bad, is incredibly valued. So I encourage you to don't just stop here with these polling questions. Please visit the website afterwards and give us feedback in that way as well. So I'll go ahead and have Yuri put up the first polling question for you all. This is a choose one single choice question. And it just asks, which draft master plan concept do you prefer for the new regional park? So a very simple kind of first reaction question. Again, the options are Mech Wonder, which is the nature exploration and immersion scheme, versus the higher energy Mech Trek with the action, fitness, and play. And I'll give you guys maybe 30 more seconds to look these over and gather your thoughts. Maybe you already know, maybe you need a few more seconds. I'm excited to see if the results are a little bit different from earlier today. Yuri, if you could reveal the answer to that question, please. The results are fairly similar to earlier today. That's interesting to see. All right, so it looks like it's a little bit of a tie with Mech Trek looking like it was in the lead. So our next question is about the look and feel of the park. So Yuri, if you could put that question up, please. Which look do you prefer for the architecture in the new regional park? This is another choose one with similar options. And if you remember, the Mech Wonder scheme had the community tree house that was tucked into the site, into the woods, with the canopy walk spurred off of it. It's more about being immersed in nature and community gathering. And then the Mech Trek is more of sort of a busy hub for the community with several different nodes spurred off of it for both the neighborhoods as well as the region. And with the porch promenade, it sort of gives you that community porch feel where you sort of know who's in your neighborhood when you're in this park. And so I'll give you just a couple more seconds to get your first reactions on this. These same polling questions will be on the website. So if you change your mind, no big deal. And Yuri, I think I'll get you to reveal the answers for that one, please. Okay, all right, so a little bit more of a tie. Community Treehouse still in the lead. That is the same as the previous meeting as well. Thank you all for your feedback. I have one more question for you. So this one asks, Yuri, if you could put the question up, please. Which two elements are the most important for the first phase of the new regional park? And you can choose two on this one. So this is just speaking to the phase site development that will occur and that the master plan will guide. So choose two of these that you feel are most important, as you know, you need this to go to the park right off the bat, or you're most excited about these destinations, and this is what this park is about. And so your options for this are the adventure course, bike amenities, the canopy walk, the main community facility, fitness trails, nature trails, play areas, or platform shelters and picnic areas. And obviously there will be more as far as comfort and accessibility and getting around the site that happens during the first phase of this project. But this is just to get to the core of what those kind of key elements might be. So a couple more seconds. And Yuri, if you could reveal those answers, please. Now this is also, I think, the same. Any one of the panelists can correct me if I'm wrong, but a good tie between, you know, bike amenities and the facility and fitness trails, low on the play areas, but a lot of excitement for those nature trails and a lot of need for those nature trails and a lot of excitement for the canopy walk. So thank you all. This is very helpful feedback for us, and we're excited to present these options to you today. So in closing, I would just like to thank you for your time, and the next steps in this process are we will be refining a single concept for the master plan based on your feedback over the next couple of months. We will be defining sustainability goals and thinking about operations and maintenance considerations. We will then phase the plan for guidance in the master plan and move on from there. So again, thank you for your time. Before we open the floor up, we'll have a little over 10 minutes for Q&A. I just wanted to encourage you to visit the public input site through this link. So that's publicinput.com/Eastfield. Starting today, we will have all new content and questions on the site, as well as opportunities to leave your feedback on the current draft design concept. All the feedback is valued, and we want to hear your reactions to these concepts and ideas. So look for that survey. It'll be up in a few days, and there's some new wildlife footage on site right now, on the website right now that we just gathered, which is pretty exciting. You can also access project information and the recordings of this webinar through the new projects tab under the Mecklenburg County Park and Rec website, and be on the lookout for the master planning process updates to the public input page, and feel free to share with your friends and neighbors. And now I will turn it over to Bert and Brian for Q&A. You all feel free to type your questions in that Q&A box, and we'll just run through them. I just want to let you know that any questions that don't get answered, we have record of them, and we can post the answers on the website afterwards. So it looks like we have a few questions coming in now.
Yeah, so thanks, Adeline. I'll start there. Let's see. Robin asked, maybe you talked about wildlife on the project. Love to hear consideration for birds, deer, and rabbits. So I think part of, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, I think a lot of what we're trying to do with the scope of this project and the types of amenities that we have is try to minimize the amount of tree clearance that we have on the property, the amount of grading and disturbance that we have to do on the property, and work as much as we can with the natural features of the site. So with that, you won't see a lot of, sport courts and athletic fields. We had another question about that earlier. On the site, more so trails that work along with the topography, and lower impact and quieter amenities within the project. Brian, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Sorry, I was responding to Sharon's in the question about the forest. Apologize.
So we've got another question here. What type of security will be on site, especially with the walking trails? So we'll approach this similar to how we approach security on our greenways. And part of that is we always recommend walking or visiting with a friend. Outside of that, we'll have a fairly robust wayfinding and sign package that'll be a part of the scope of the project, which will help you kind of maneuver your way through, but also identify where you are within the park. So if something were to happen, if someone were to turn an ankle or something like that, they would be able to notify officials where they are within the park, so someone could get there pretty quickly. Within Park and Recreation, we have our park rangers that visit the parks on a regular basis, several times a week. We also work with the police departments within the county, our sheriff's department, of course, and at times we work with undercover officers as well, if we feel like there's a need for that. The vast majority of crime that we have on our properties are larceny of vehicles, and a lot of those are crimes of opportunity. So someone leaves a cell phone or a laptop sitting in the seat of car. Go ahead, Brian.
I'm going to say, I see a question that came in and it's asking, can we assume that bikes would be allowed to ride on the trails classified as fitness trails and nature trails? And what we're looking at currently in the master plan is trying to provide a pretty diverse trail network, but due to the different types of uses, there may be different trail designations. So for some of the narrower trails, we may classify those as purely pedestrian trails, and obviously like the pump track and some of the more aggressive, if there were single track type mountain bike trails, we would want to limit those to mountain bike users. And there may also be opportunities though on some of the trails where we would be using like a gravel surface that are more of a multi-purpose trail, that those could serve more like our typical greenway, where it would serve both bicycle and pedestrian traffic. So the intent in the master plan is to really provide different types of trails that serve different user groups.
Let's see, James asked if we have the ability to leverage those large utility easements around the site to connect to other areas, such as Asbury Chapel Road, Homestead, etc. And the short answer is yes, we do have the opportunity to do that. Duke Energy, back, I'm going to say within the last 6 to 8 years, changed their policy, and they do allow for trails to run kind of within their easements with certain parameters. We can't be within a certain distance of the base of the towers. We can't have vertical structures, things of that nature. So we are taking advantage of the easement that we have within our property with some of our trail facilities and potentially some of our parking facilities for vehicles to further reduce impact to the more beautiful kind of wooded natural areas of the site. The one thing that I will say in terms of using those is when those easements were laid out, they were laid out, to be a straight line point A to B, and they don't necessarily work well with the topography. So rather than a trail going straight down that easement, it may bend and curve a little bit within that. But we do have the opportunity to make some of those connections, and that kind of flows nicely into the next question from Jim. For either master plan, will there be connections to existing and planned bikeways and greenways? And the answer is yes. We've already met with officials from the town of Huntersville, and then we've recently updated the Greenway Master Plan for Mecklenburg County. And we've got some instances on those maps. And Jim, if you want to go and look at that a little bit later on the website, you'll see that we've got some notes on there where this trail system will provide connection into future greenway trails there. So very good question. Thank you.
I see a question. Oh, it just popped up. What consideration has been made to limit additional traffic in the Skybrook neighborhood? And so that's always a question that we're asked. As you probably saw in the master plan options, as we're currently proposing it, the vehicular access would be from Eastfield Road. So there's not intent to provide vehicular connections from the adjacent neighborhoods. We are studying where there's opportunity to provide pedestrian connections to allow people from within the neighborhood to walk through the neighborhood and gain access to the park, as well as based on the previous question, we're deliberately designing to provide connections and opportunities to extend our trails to these future greenway connections, which will serve as additional bicycle and pedestrian access points from the surrounding community. So we don't anticipate that the development of this park would increase people from outside of the neighborhoods coming into the neighborhood to access the park. Access would predominantly be from existing major roadways, but we do strongly want to improve pedestrian and bicycle connectivity to the surrounding area.
Brian, there was a question about, and this kind of mirrors a question that we got in the noon meeting about sidewalks or bike lanes on Eastfield Road.
So as part of our project, and right now we're doing the master planning to obviously gain community feedback on what the park, the main bones of the park want to be. But as we move into design development and construction documentation, we will be coordinating with the North Carolina Department of Transportation, as well as somebody pointed out earlier, this road, even though the property is in Huntersville, the road is in the city of Charlotte. So we'll be coordinating with CDOT and as well as the town of Huntersville, because this roadway is part of multiple small area plans. So we will be coordinating with everybody to determine, the traffic impacts, not just from our project, but from all the development that is occurring in the area, and determine what roadway improvements may be necessary, both for access to our project as well as just to improve the traffic condition for the area. And so typically that would involve sidewalks and potentially bike lanes. And so that is something that, again, Park and Rec does not build roadways, but we do partner with those that do, to make sure that those facilities are provided as needed as we develop these projects.
There was a question about how and when the property was purchased and whether or not this was part of the old Wallace farm. And I believe it was part of the Wallace farm. Adeline, I know that's something that we talked about very early in the design process. I see you shaking your head, yes.
Yes, that's some information that we've been trying to dig into and talk to those folks about the historic use of it over time. There were definitely connections to the old farms. I'm not sure what happened with regards to their family operations on this site, but there were definitely connections.
Yep, and the property was purchased in 2000 by the county for the express reason for a park in this area. So it only took us 21 years to get here, but we're here, so that's great. Are there any questions? We talked about safety. I did see a message in the chat that, and Dean, this is for you guys. The windows look great in all the concepts there, but we need to make sure that we do some strike proofing for birds in that area. Absolutely.
Yeah, so that'll be something that we'll need to really look into. And there's a lot of strategies out there. There's even certain glass that has a certain reflection that just shows birds that it's almost like an opaque wall, that so it avoids that. But that's definitely something that we need to look into, understanding that we want the views out, we want the light in, but yeah, we don't want to impact nature when we do it.
I think we are at time. So Bert, I'll give it to you for closing.
Sure. Yeah, again, thank you so much for joining us this evening. For members of your family or friends or some of your neighbors, please share with them the link publicinput.com/Eastfield. If you're a little more old school, you can go to the site, scroll to the bottom and find our staff contact information there, and reach out through email or phone call. We'd love to get your input. So the presentation tonight, both the video recording and the slides will be available through the website. The poll questions are going to be there too, and they'll be open through September 10th. So you've got 2 or 3 weeks to go and provide any additional feedback or ask any additional questions that you may have. For broader Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation information, you can go to our website at mecnc.gov/parkandrec and find a little bit more information there, not only on this park, but our other parks or greenways and nature preserves, recreation centers, and our programs. And if we don't see you before, we'll definitely hope to see you in October when we show you kind of the input that we've received and how that's led us to the final master plan for the site. So again, thank you. Oh, the other thing, go to the site if you are interested to see what a deer selfie looks like. We've got wildlife cameras that are all over the site right now. And one of those is the most interesting photo of a deer I've seen in some time. So go and take a look at that. Thank you so much for your time, and we hope to see you and talk with you and meet with you soon.
Thank you all. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good evening.